Hey guys, really quickly, thank you so much for clicking this video. But I just wanted to say before we get started that I filmed this video before it was actually one of the first videos that I filmed before I relaunched my YouTube channel. So I was still figuring out the camera angles and the microphone volume. So the audio is a little bit shaky in some areas, and you probably wouldn't have even noticed that unless I brought it up, so I'm probably just sabotaging myself here. But I still posted this video anyway because I really enjoy talking on this topic, and I really hope you guys enjoy listening to me talk about this topic. So, yeah, let's get into it. Just so y'all know, I'm in a bad mood. I'm in a terrible ass mood. I feel ugly as sin. I feel like shite, as the Brits would say. And that's because I saw the three things today that just generally piss me off in life. Number one, a man peeing at the side of the road. On purpose. Like, why do y'all do that? Be a man. Hold it in. But don't take God out of your thoughts to pull over and take a leak at the side of the street during rush hour. There are children present, sir. Come on, man. Do better. Put it in a bottle. Number two, people talking to me with food in their mouth. Enough said. Life in prison without a chance of parole for all of you, each and every one of you, with no remorse. And finally, number three, I saw yet another ad for the final seasons of both Blackish and Grownish. And it reminded me that we're literally saying goodbye to the last real set of black sitcoms that we have. And I remember in the 90s, we couldn't get enough of black TV. So, what happened? Where did it all go wrong? Let's get into it. I made a TikTok a while back. Did you see it? You should probably go check it out if you haven't. And follow while you're there. And all my other social medias linked in the description box below. But it was that trend. This is what your favorite one of these says about you. I'm gonna put the video up so you can see what I'm talking about.
This is what your favorite one of these says about you. You're choosing the safest option. Maybe a little bit overrated, but it's still a good one. Is this one your favorite because it's good, or are you just really horny? All right, we get it. You like this one. This may not be everyone's favorite, but it's yours, and you're totally chill about it. You're into the classics. You're old. You're really old. Your social security number is 2. You are one pretentious hipster. Officer, it's this one, right here. Oh, you're cool. I like you. No way, you actually know that one? Can we be friends? This one's just a phase. You'll grow out of it when you grow up. You will never grow up. Oh, you picked this one to be different. How clever. If you chose this one, you are a liar. This is no one's favorite. If you chose this one, you are correct. This is the best one. And for those of you in the comments saying, where's this one? Where's that one? You're annoying. That's what that one says about you.
There were two things I picked up when I was creating this video. I put shows like Blackish, Black AF, and Chewing Gum in slots where there is some sort of negative connotation attached to the heading that it's under. I would say this was unintentional, but it was very much intentional. But still unintentional at the same time. It's just that when you compare these shows to shows like, say, Family Matters or The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or The Jeffersons, there's no way you can put these sitcoms over these sitcoms. And when you look back at the TikTok again, the more recent the sitcom, the worse label it is put under. Like, Blackish just got you're pretentious for liking this show. Chewing Gum got is this actually good or are you just feeling some type of way? But Black AF just got straight up this is bad, no one likes this, this is just no, absolutely not. Which was odd to me when I think about it, because a specific genre of something is supposed to be evolving and getting better over time. But black sitcoms seem to be doing the exact opposite, which led me to the very question that we're going to answer today. What the is happening to black sitcoms? But before we get into that, for those of you that don't know me, hi, I'm the human farmer, the 100 emoji, Samuel Boucher because it's French. And for those of you that do know me, you're very much welcome. If you like what you see here today, please go ahead and hit that like button. And if you have anything to add to the conversation, please feel free to do that in the comment section down below. And if you're new to this channel or you just haven't done it already, please go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all my latest videos. All the works, bruh. If you were to ask a person of any race to name 5 white sitcoms, that would be too easy. So let's say 5 white sitcoms between that were on the air between 2010 to present. They would probably more than likely be able to do it. I can do it. Modern Family, Big Bang Theory, Family Guy, Parks and Recreations, and The Office. And that's just off the top of my head. And there's still more coming in as I think about it. But ask me about black sitcoms that don't air on BET. Majority of the people are probably going to just say blackish. Me, I would throw in grownish and mixedish. But all of these shows were still created by the same person. And in some way or the other are still related to each other. So you can just count these as one. But if the same question was asked in the 90s, yes, there would still be white sitcoms for you to choose from, but the black sitcoms would have been just as abundant. Before we dive into the topic of black sitcoms, we first need to find out what defines a sitcom as black. According to Wikipedia, a black sitcom is a sitcom in American culture that mainly features an African American cast. Although sitcoms with primarily black characters have been present since the earliest days of network television, this genre rose to prominence in the 1990s. The key terms to note here are mainly features an African American cast and with primarily black characters. So even if a show includes black characters, if they don't make up the majority of the cast, I don't consider it a black sitcom. So shows like That's So Raven, yes. Shows like True Jackson VP, where only 2 of the 7-person cast is black, I don't consider a black sitcom, despite having a black lead. For me, it also needs to feel black. Like even when they're not directly addressing it, it still feels black when watching it, you know? Like the Disney Channel show Casey Undercover. I'd call this a teen action spy sitcom before I call it a black sitcom, even though it is to some extent, according to Google's definition, because it includes an entire family of color. For me, a black sitcom, even though it shouldn't be tailored for a specific audience, it's definitely tailored for black people in their blackety black lives having black experiences played by black as hell actors. And of course, this is going to generate a primarily black audience. But you get why I say Casey isn't tailored to be a black sitcom. It's a spy action comedy made for teens and kids, no matter the race. So just that you could get a general idea of black sitcoms from shows that just include black characters. Black sitcoms: Family Reunion, Proud Family, Living Single, Everybody Hates Chris, Moesha, The Cosby Show. Predominantly black characters having black people experiences. And then there's shows that may touch on black experiences as well, but majority of the cast isn't black and there's only a few black characters. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Friends from College, Community, True Jackson VP, New Girl, and The Office. To get a proper understanding of how we got here, we need to understand the history. Going all the way back to not just the first black sitcom, but the first television sitcom ever. Because who are we today if we don't know where we came from, am I right? Before the invention of the television, people used to get their daily dose of entertainment from the radio. I'm pretty sure we all know this, right? The first television sitcom actually aired in the UK and was called Pinwright's Progress. It first aired on November 29, 1946 and ran for 10 episodes. The first sitcom to air in the US, however, was called Mary Kay and Johnny, and that first premiered in November 1947 on the now defunct Dumont Network before moving between CBS and NBC. The sitcom aired up to 1950, estimating approximately a total of 300 episodes. Which makes sense. It's the first of its kind. People are going to be intrigued and more than likely grow fond of it. The success of this show birthed one of the most iconic sitcoms of all time, I Love Lucy, which ran from 1951 to 1957 on CBS and became the most watched program in the US at the time. The 50s was also home to the sitcom Honeymooners, while the 60s welcomed the Andy Griffith Show and the Dick Van Dyke Show as some of the top programs during their time. Now you're probably saying, Samuel, this is great and all, but where are all the black sitcoms? Well, look at you asking all the right questions and stuff. If there is anything that the movie Hairspray taught me is that the time period in which I'm speaking about right now, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, were some of the most segregated times in US TV history. You weren't really seeing any other races on TV besides white. Black people were barely given a slot, much less other races. And even if another culture was being portrayed on television, the characters were still being played by white actors majority of the time. Which leads me to the first black sitcom in US history, Amos and Andy. This was the first sitcom in American television to portray black lives, but before it went to television, it was actually a radio show. And the two main characters were voiced by, you guessed it, white actors. Freeman Gosden, who played Amos Jones, and Charles Carell, who played Andrew Brown. It is important to note that this was during a time where black minstrelsy, commonly known as blackface, was at an all time high. White actors would paint themselves as black people and then portray us with goofy antics in comical situations, which led to the stereotype that black people could only be seen as comic clowns and could not be taken seriously, which is obviously a reputation derived from slavery days. So, having two white actors voice these two black men and many other black characters in the script was just considered another Tuesday. However, when the show transitioned to television, it saw Alvin Childress, Spencer Williams, and breakout actor Tim Moore, all black, take up the roles of Amos, Andy, and another role called Kingfish, respectively. It became instantly popular amongst diverse audiences and was the first program to showcase black individuals as entrepreneurs, lawyers, law enforcement, and not the usual waiters and maids and handymen. However, doing a good job on that front, the show still engaged and played on harmful stereotypes that black people were irresponsible and uneducated in an attempt to produce humor. Because of this, the show received backlash from the NAACP. Oh, it felt good saying that. The NAACP. I ruined it. They called out the show's writers and actors for being socially irresponsible, and this was during a time where these things were normalized, and it was still being called out. So you could just imagine how a show like this would be read in today's society. I could already see Twitter crashing. Anyway, after pressure from a lot of different organizations, Amos and Andy was canceled in 1953 and taken off the air. And quite honestly, it's prime. Now remember, we're still in the 50s going on to the 60s, where shows I mentioned before, I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke, were taking over network television. And after Amos and Andy and all the controversy surrounding it, we didn't get another black sitcom for over a decade. That wasn't until a little show called Julia premiered in 1968. Now, when you ask some folks what do they think the earliest black sitcom was, they might say The Jeffersons or Sanford and Son, even The Flip Wilson Show. But in fact, the first black sitcom we got on TV since the cancellation of Amos and Andy's was called Julia. And this show truly was a trailblazer and it doesn't get talked about enough. Not only was it the first black sitcom to star a black person in the leading role for over a decade, it was the first and only for a while to have a black woman in the starring role playing a non stereotypical character. Even though the show was created by a white producer, it starred the late beautiful Diane Carroll, who actually passed away pretty recently, just in 2019 at the age of 84, who also played the iconic role of Dominique Devereaux in the soap opera Dynasty. And the show followed her as a recently widowed mother raising her son while also juggling a career as a nurse. Then we move on to The Flip Wilson Show, which premiered on September 17, 1970. Now, even though it isn't a typical sitcom, it is worth mentioning because it is the first American television program starring a black person in the title role to become highly successful among the white audience, and even became the nation's second most watched show, only being beaten by CBS's All in the Family. Now, when we want to talk about black sitcoms that have withstood the test of time and are still talked about and even broadcasted today, we have Sanford and Son, Fat Albert, That's My Mama, Good Times, and The Jefferson. All the shows that I just named in their own unique way contributed greatly to the development of black sitcoms. These shows really are the roots of black situation comedy on US television. But, of course, there's a but. There's always a but. Even though we appreciate these shows for what they've done for the community, they were often criticized for being segregated. That's right, black shows can be segregated too. Let's get into it. The writers of this show were so determined to show black people outside of those harmful stereotypes and truly showcase the black experience in a positive light, they sort of forgot to include the rest of the world. Let me explain. Other races were hardly ever seen in these shows. And the way they were written, it almost seemed as if a show like the Mary Tyler Moore Show and The Jeffersons couldn't exist in the same physical world. And because of this, it was kind of pushing the narrative that black people can't coincide with the rest of American society at the time, which was predominantly non people of color, and that they could only be successful and thrive amongst their own people, which was simply not true. Black people could do everything that white people could do, right? Even though The Jeffersons went on to be one of the longest running black sitcoms with 11 seasons, lucky for us, in the 80s, along came the saving grace that challenged all narratives and destroyed all stereotypes, and truly is the grandparent of the black family sitcom genre, even though it hasn't really aged well. I'm talking about none other than The Cosby Show. Created and starring the now disgraced Bill Cosby, The Cosby Show is known for being the show for black families, as it erased all stereotypes and showed a successful black family and introduced the world to another part of the African American experience. According to a report by Entertainment Weekly, The Cosby Show helped to make possible a larger variety of shows with a predominantly black cast, which we then got to witness from shows like In Living Color and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. This show was so popular that Bill Cosby was being referred to as America's dad. Do you know what it is to have a black man being called America's dad? Just stop to think about how powerful that is for a minute. The show also helped launch the career of many black artists that we know today, such as Raven Simone and Felicia Rashad. This show left such a legacy that today, despite all the controversy surrounding Cosby, is still known as the black family sitcom. In fact, this show was the only show to be the number one show for 5 seasons, along with All in the Family, the show that I mentioned before that was the only show to beat out The Flip Wilson Show. That's how popular this sitcom was. From this point, the only place left to go was up. Even though the Cosbys and the Jeffersons paved the way for the shows that came after it, like there's no doubt that they did the walking so that every black sitcom that came afterwards could do all the running and the flying and the kicking and the jumping. There's no denying that the prime of black TV was in the 1990s. The 80s may have put it on the map, but the 90s damn near knocked it out the park. From 1990 to the year 2000 is the first time in TV history where there were enough black sitcoms to match the amount of white sitcoms that were on television. For reference, white families had Full House, black families had Family Matters. For Everybody Loves Raymond, we had Martin. For Friends, we had Living Single. Even though Living Single is what inspired Friends, if you ask me, but whatever. Then we also had Sister Sister, Smart Guy, Keenan and Kyle, and so many other great ones. And I don't mean to compare. All the shows from both sides that I just listed are pioneers and marked their place as classics in the sitcom world. But you get my point. It truly was the golden age of black network TV. Now, we discussed the shows that set the path, but what specifically caused this peak? What caused networks to take interest in these black talents, these black entertainers, enough to put them on network television? Here's my theory. The 90s was also known for being the rise of the hip hop music scene, which is a black genre. So we had artists like Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G. rapping about black people and black struggles in an industry that you haven't really seen that before, while dressed in black as hell. So this sparked America's interest in black culture. The way we speak, the way we live, the way we dress. And this was also when networks like Fox and the WB were now starting up. So they were eager to establish themselves with a black audience. And it proved to be effective because shows like Living Single and Martin were blossoming, even with a small viewership of white viewers. So I mentioned that the hip hop scene contributed to the interest that networks had in black talent in the early 90s. An example, a perfect example of this can be seen in my all-time favorite show of all time, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, starring the now seasoned actor Will Smith, but at the time had never acted a day in his life. But he was an up and coming rapper, and that's what was trending at the time. So he was a perfect fit for what they were looking for. Despite his qualifications, and luckily for NBC, the show ended up being very popular, not just amongst black audiences, but with white households and other cultures as well, which just further proved that shows about black culture can appeal to diverse viewers. Things were seemingly looking great. Every day, more and more black sitcoms showcasing different aspects of black culture from various perspectives were being added to the roster. But as trends go, unfortunately, one day you're hot and the next you're rot. America started to move on from hip hop, unfortunately. And I should say that's the same thing they did with voguing. Like, Vogue was a really big thing when Madonna dropped the song. People were paying legit money just to learn how to Vogue. And then all of a sudden, it was a fever dream. So, in that same sense, despite being wildly popular amongst the black community, people started to lose interest in the hip hop genre, which is crazy to me because the best genre, what? And in turn started to lose interest in black sitcoms. I would say the decline truly took place during the period of 1997 to 2001, and this would be when shows like Moesha, My Wife and Kids, The Steve Harvey Show, and The Parkers, those shows were on the air and was giving more of the 21st century black experience. Now, we all know the longevity of a show depends on the average viewership, and that determines if a show is picked up for more seasons or not. And that's how shows like Grey's Anatomy and The Simpsons have been able to stay on air as long as they have, because they have a dedicated fan base, a dedicated viewership that will tune in to watch new episodes no matter what. So they're always going to have a consistent viewership. The United States uses the Nielsen ratings to measure the viewership and the ratings of their programs. And it's usually assigned to random households, but obviously, even randomly, the majority of the households are still going to predominantly end up being white households. And you got to remember this was during a period where Friends was on the air at the time, which was the greatest sitcom, which is the greatest sitcom of all time. So a lot of the white viewership was going to shows like Friends. And even though black viewers were still invested in black sitcoms, it didn't report that way unless they were a Nielsen family. But that's just the thing, and that's why representation is so important nowadays because you tend to want to see and relate to somebody that looks like you. So generally, black communities are going to gravitate towards people like them on television, and the same thing is going to happen with white households. Bentley Carl Eden, Bentley, Bentley Kyle Evans, executive producer of The Jamie Foxx Show, rightfully said, and I quote, "The only way you can have an accurate count is if every TV came with a system that tabulated what people are watching. I guarantee you, if this was the case, a lot of black sitcoms would have garnered the same, if not more, viewership than other sitcoms on television at the time." So, with this decline in viewership, the amount of black sitcoms on TV decreased from 15 to just 6. And not too long after that, eventually hit zero. Stars from a number of these shows called out producers and called out networks for not putting as much effort into black sitcoms as they did with shows like Seinfeld, who didn't have the strongest infancy, but was given that push by networks until it eventually became the phenomenon that it was. The decline era, I wouldn't really call a decline. Yes, we were seeing less black sitcoms on the networks that we were used to seeing them on, which were ABC, NBC, Fox, and so on. Finding new homes, for example, That's So Raven and Proud Family on Disney Channel, Everybody Hates Chris on the CW, Boondocks on Adult Swim, and even Read Between the Lines on BET. Watch out, world, I'm grown now. After saying all of this, I will say that the position of blacks on television is still better than any other minority. We had to wait a really long time before we got proper representation for our Asian and Latinx brothers and sisters. And even still, I feel they don't get enough recognition. Like, they don't get the flowers that they deserve. So, having so much history of black TV to talk about, you probably wonder why I'm complaining at all. Well, it wasn't so much of a complaint than it was a concern. I needed to understand why is it that I was able to find more black television sitcoms with black families before I was born easier than I could today in an era where representation means everything. And that's because there aren't really any black sitcoms on network television to choose from anymore. Now there is BET, but I probably may make another video in the future specifically about the shows on BET because that's a whole other topic by itself. But the reason you can't really find black sitcoms today is not because people don't care about black lives, but because blacks and other cultures are being more integrated into the media in a way that we haven't experienced before. Nowadays, producers are more concerned with producing sitcoms with a more diverse cast, where inclusivity is at the forefront of all things. Like, take, for instance, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Features characters of all backgrounds: Caucasian Americans, Latin Americans, African Americans, and there's episodes that showcase the culture and struggles of each character. But then there's episodes that just showcase them as normal people in every day to day situation, promoting equality and showing that minorities can fit normal into society. Don't get me wrong, you can still find black sitcoms in general today. Obviously, we know Blackish, but there's also Atlanta, there's Insecure starring the glorious Issa Rae. So they're not extinct. But the reason we don't see black sitcoms as much as we used to is because we're finally seeing the progress that we've been fighting to achieve. And that's to be integrated and treated as equals. We no longer have to have our own show. We still have a long way to go in terms of a lot of things, but the takeaway is that we no longer really have to have our own show for us to be able to share our truths with the rest of the world. We can now do it through any platform. Thank you guys for watching this video, and even more commendable than that, thank you for sitting through all of this and listening to me babble on and on. If you guys like this and want to hear me talk about more topics like this, or just talk in general, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all my latest videos. And also don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Follow me on all my social medias, link will be in the description box below. And I also want to hear, what is your favorite black sitcom? Is there one that was or wasn't mentioned today? Or one you know but you don't see people talking about much? Or do you just want to add to the conversation in general? Let me know in the comment section down below, guys. Alright, I'm out of here, y'all. Thanks for joining me. Peace.